speaking of the experience from China, because China has been pursuing a development path, like tailored, really kind of centered on its people and people-oriented, and to really tackle some of the challenges the country has faced. For example, poverty alleviation, and now really trying to move from a manufacturing base to more innovation-driven. So what can this experience like bring to global development and somewhat offer solutions to Bosnia and Herzegovina?
I use sometimes China as an example of development and evaluation from poverty as an example of how times change and how we always have to think about what we want to do in 20, 30 years. For example, in 1990, Bosnia was a fairly developed part of former Yugoslavia. Bosnia and Herzegovina had a trade surplus, big engineering companies, very capable in infrastructure. And at that time, for example, railway infrastructure was on par with many European countries in 1990. Today, Bosnia is still not at the level of 1990 economically. And China has took out of poverty 700 million people. This is how times change in one lifetime, in my lifetime. We were ready to be an economic small power in Europe, and now we are just a small market, small country, while China had 700 million people in poverty, and now they're not in poverty. They are consumers now. They live much different lives. This is what is important when I talk about this topic, that how Bosnia needs to take a new direction in terms of development. And China is a very good example in quick development. We need to talk both about infrastructure, but also about improving quality, tourism, travel, culture. When people actually feel like where they are born, it's the best way to be, and they don't feel like they have to move and live somewhere else because of quality. Economic opportunities will come, but quality makes people stay. Bosnia has a problem, as well as the whole region here in Western Balkans, of people actually packing and leaving. And this is something we have to work on. So taking the example of other development success stories, such as China, we also have to get back on track in our own development.
But given today's increasing uncertainty in the world, we have energy crisis, we have regional conflicts. So what are some of the most pressing challenges in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and where does the collaboration between China and your country fit into kind of solving this?
Because war is something that is the worst thing that can happen to anyone. And we had wars in the 90s, and Bosnia was really struggling to get out of the war and into the development phase. And we are still developing. We are still in transition, both economically and politically. What we have to do in the future is actually find the way to take current changes in, let's say, in the world economic order, and take it to our advantage. For example, China is not anymore a supplier of cheap goods for big markets such as the United States and the EU. China is now developing its own technology, higher technology, and more expensive. It is obvious that some of the big industries in Europe, in the European market, Germany, France, Scandinavian countries, they want to develop their own supply chains that are less dependent on far distances. And for this reason, I think this is an opportunity for Bosnia, but I also think for China, to bring the supply chains here in the region to be close to the EU market. Chinese companies are already doing this in Serbia, for example. Big factory that is geared towards supplying goods to the European market, getting closer here because it's not so cheap to produce anymore in China. We can bring it here and make this economic opportunity on the distance to the big market, which is the EU market. I think this is the mutual opportunity. for both Bosnia and China, Bosnia and Herzegovina and China.
For now, Chinese companies are still eyeing for a more globalized market, but again, amid the current trends of growing unilateralism, protectionism, China has consistently advocated bilateral and multilateral cooperation. So how do you evaluate Beijing's approach in promoting cooperation to achieve, as you have mentioned, mutually beneficial outcomes?
China is not producing plastic anymore. China is producing big technology, and its economy is growing exponentially. And there are three big markets now, three big economies: the United States, European Union, and China. Yes. They have to find a way to work together. And for me, this is the ideal development in the future. Of course, it's not easy, because whenever a young economy grows, it challenges some positions that are traditionally somewhere else. But there has to be a way in the market so everyone gets a share. And we've seen increase of trade restrictions on all sides in terms of protecting certain industries that are important for future development, such as chip industry, computer industries, and so on, semiconductor industries. There has to be a way. It's a big world. There are big markets still to grow, too many countries to continue to develop and bring the GDP up. There is space for everyone. This is my opinion. And we have to make sure that these economies grow together, all big economies, and so they don't fight. In my school, I studied a lot about in the political economy and how economies need to operate. There are many ways. Isolationism, trade wars, restrictions, it's not something that is helping us in 20 years. We need to work together so that everyone is happy. I think there is enough for everyone.